Holy banana nut muffin on a Sunday morning. That was an episode. I'm, of course, talking about The Mandalorian Season 3. Book of Boba Fett, Episode 5. Ooh, let's get into this one. What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerdvengers Tower. Do me a favor, smash like on this video if you loved Episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. I, like many Star Wars fans out there, loved this episode. I've been raving about it on social media. I've watched it over 3 times already. But there is a sort of elephant in the room. That is the fact that this really, for all intents and purposes, is not an episode of Book of Boba Fett. It's kind of being memed out there, but it's absolutely true. Like, every bit of Episode 5 feels like an episode of The Mandalorian. The music, the fact that it follows him around the entire time. In every conceivable way, this is an episode of The Mandalorian, but what it really is an episode in the Filoni-Verse. And on top of that, all of the indications for the end of this episode make me think that next episode will continue to follow Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, as he goes to meet up with Grogu and Luke Skywalker. So what's the deal with this show? Well, as I've been saying in some recent content, I think that Boba has essentially arced out after episode 4 of his own show. And I'm not saying that that arc is useless. It informs the character and it's going to inform him moving forward, but it is kind of completed. Like, the action that we will see when he's defending Mos Espa or trying to fight the Pikes, that'll be really cool, but I really don't see too much of a character growth for Boba Fett from where he is at now and where he will be at the end of this show. I think different folks are going to feel about this differently. Like, in all seriousness, did we need Book of Boba Fett? Is this show really just Mandalorian Season 2.5? And would this have been better if it was just Season 3 of The Mandalorian? And why wasn't this just Season 3 of The Mandalorian? I think all of those are valid questions. I think fans that are feeling like the first 4 episodes were kind of a waste, they're valid. I think fans that love the first 4 episodes are valid as well. But for me, personally here, I will just say that I saw this coming kind of a mile away, and I always thought to myself, the determining factor is going to be how good is the back half of the season if it is very different than the first half of the season. If it does follow completely different characters, is that going to be acceptable? Well, for me, yes, if the episode is a banger. And episode 5 of Book of Boba Fett is not just a banger, but one of the best episodes of live action Star Wars television we have ever gotten. So it's like, while I can completely acknowledge that this is a weird show, this is a weird pace, and I'm not sure this was all planned out perfectly, I simply can't be mad at the Book of Boba Fett. They just gave me such an incredible episode of live action Star Wars. I personally am over it. I don't care. I can't be mad at this. And I'll talk more about the fandom and how the fans might be reacting to this situation and this show at the end of the video. But now, let me talk about the character of Din Djarin. Man, what an interesting character. I think John and Dave have possibly created one of the most compelling story arcs for a character in Star Wars ever. It's not just some character. The character comes with all sorts of interesting elements that we see played out perfectly in this episode. This whole situation is anchored in his love for Grogu, which I think is part of the secret formula of why this character is so popular. Everybody loves Grogu, man. Adorable little baby Yoda. Very, very cute character. We love other characters loving Grogu. We especially love Din Djarin growing to have a really strong attachment to Grogu. Grogu having an attachment back to him. This sort of father-son thing that they have going on is incredible. It's compelling, and it informs his character in this episode specifically because he wants to go see Grogu. He is really, really attached to going to see Grogu. But it's not just Grogu. It's not just the love of Grogu that informs this character and makes him compelling. The fact that he is a Mandalorian, the fact that he is a foundling brought up in this new cult-like version of Mandalorians, that is super compelling. It's a big part of his character identity, but it's really interestingly juxtaposed with Grogu. And in this episode, they really focus on that. The armorer is telling Din about how a Jedi has to let go of all attachment. Din replies that this is the exact opposite of the Mandalorian creed. Loyalty is really important for Mandalorians. And so Din himself is walking this really interesting path between all of his beliefs as a Mandalorian and all of this new stuff he's introduced to when it comes to the Jedi. I'm going to say something that I did call a while back, but I sort of want to double down on this point. And I also want to mention, this is speculation. I haven't heard anything about this being an actual plan from Lucasfilm, but I think Din Djarin will not only rule Mandalore, but he will become a sort of new Tar Vizsla and will have some Jedi-like training, becoming a sort of mix between a Mandalorian and a Jedi. I think all the talk of Tar Vizsla and the fact that he was Mandalorian and Jedi is foreshadowing of this path being walked by Din Djarin. And I think all of the sort of conflict that this character is going through between his Mandalorian upbringing and this new Jedi stuff he is being introduced to is really taking us in a very interesting path where, again, I think he will have some of that talent and some of those skills. The fact that he is fighting so hard against the Darksaber and unable to wield it because he can't just let stuff go is really, really interesting. Unless he's always going to have trouble with that weapon for the rest of his time with it, we can assume he's going to grow in the usage of it by becoming a little bit more open. I also think that there's some foreshadowing in season 2 of The Mandalorian with his connection to Grogu. When he is trying to get Grogu to grab the little metal ball from him, he is told by Ahsoka to just sort of open up his mind, to reach out with his feelings. And when he does, Grogu makes this sort of sound and expression of recognition. And it's obvious that they have some kind of a connection. And I think we'll see even more hinting at this when Din goes to visit Grogu and Luke Skywalker. And yes, I absolutely believe that Luke Skywalker will be in episode 6 of The Mandalorian. I actually called months and months ago that I had heard that Luke Skywalker was going to be in this show. And now we have the perfect setup for it. He wants to go visit Grogu. Luke is with Grogu, training him, but I think there's going to be something much cooler going on than just a little visit. I believe Luke will notice the Darksaber, and I believe there will be some kind of a discussion about how to tap into the Force. Luke Skywalker imparting some wisdom on Din Djarin. I also just want to say this episode felt like a love letter to the prequels. We of course get the new ship that Mando is going to be driving around in. It is a yellow and silver N1 Naboo starfighter that they do kind of chrome out for Mando. And this was so cool. The sounds it makes, the model itself being this excellent callback to the Republic, to the prequels, to the Queen of Naboo. But on top of that, when he takes it out for a test flight, he's going on the exact same path that the pod racers took back in Phantom Menace. It is incredible. The nostalgia was real. The incredible Star Wars connections don't stop there. We get BD1, or what is very likely to be BD1, from the Jedi Fallen Order series of video games. Might this hint at Cal Kestis showing up in the Mando-verse at some point? I don't know. Regardless, it was so cool to see BD1. He's doing very similar stuff to what he does in the games by putting up the hologram to show Mando where to put pieces onto the ship. We get a little bit more of a hint at what is going on overall in the galaxy when the two X-Wings pull Mando over in space above Tatooine. The Asian Ranger that does have a history with the Mandalorian asks him if he's ever driven a Razor Crest before, and he explains that Razor Crest model was involved in some kind of a situation with Imperial Remnant. And the guy wants to talk to Mando about this because it's a big deal. The Imperial Remnant is a massive deal for what is going on currently in the galaxy. I personally think that's all going to lead to Thrawn. Basically, for me, guys, top to bottom, this is exactly what I want out of live action Star Wars. This is exactly what I want out of the Filoni-Verse. This was an incredible episode with so many fun Easter eggs, awesome moments. I had a smile on my face the whole time. It contextualizes things. It reminds us why Mando is such an interesting character, and it sets up stuff for the future. 10 out of 10. My favorite episode of the season, and Boba Fett's not even in it. And lastly, I'll talk just briefly about the fandom and where I think the fandom is going to be at. I think what may well happen here is a lot of people agreeing that this episode is awesome, and I think the next 2 episodes are going to be straight fire as well, and many Star Wars fans are going to be all for that, but there will probably be a lot of folks pointing out the fact that this doesn't actually feel like a complete and total season, that the Book of Boba Fett was a very oddly paced show that spent a long time just kind of messing around with Boba in the desert and then opened up to some really fire, big-scale Filoni-Verse episodes, and I do think there will be a mixed opinion on the show itself. But I think most importantly, after these next few episodes, the faith in Jon and Dave to usher in a new era of Star Wars that most fans will really enjoy will be restored. Many folks will just say, okay, something strange happened here. There's a weird little Boba Fett arc here, but ultimately we're still on track. All of this Filoni-Verse stuff coming together is going to be freaking fantastic, and we don't even know for sure how crazy this is going to get in the next 2 episodes, but I'm anticipating it to be real crazy. I also just want to say that there's finally some really cool stuff to get into and talk about with where the show is going, where the whole Filoni-Verse thing is going, so I will be making several videos in the next few days, and of course doing a big preview video on what we expect from the Dave Filoni written episode, which is likely to include Luke Skywalker next week. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.